afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to this week's edition of the GNAT-TV News Project Summer Edition. I'm Griff McClellan. Once again, I'm pleased to welcome the GNAT-TV News Director, Andrew McKeever.
Good to be here, Griff.
Andrew, let's start with the most important thing these days, the elections, and what's going on. What update can you provide us?
Right. Well, we've been talking about the elections the last couple of shows, and I guess the big news that came out this week was a poll that was released by the University of New Hampshire Survey Center, commissioned by WCAX, the TV station up in Burlington, which came with I have to say, some fairly shocking results. It found that Becca Balint, the senator from Windham County, who's running for the U.S. congressional seat being vacated by Peter Welch, is ahead of her nearest competitor, Lieutenant Governor Molly Gray, who's also running for the congressional seat, by a huge margin, 63 to 21%. That's a 42% gap. That was a race that has been widely considered to be a fairly close one. Maybe the gap was 5 to 10% in favor of Balint, but nothing like 42%. So, you know, polls are polls, and methodology around polling has been very suspect, particularly in recent years. You know, we can think back to the 2020 presidential election, which showed Joe Biden ahead by a comfortable margin going into the November election. Turned out it was a much closer race than the polls had suggested. So, you know, we'll see what happens. And of course, the only poll that counts is happening on August 9th when people go to the polls. So, but anyway, it was certainly greeted with some excitement by the Balint folks. I happened to be at an event for Becca Balint on Tuesday, just a short distance from here over in Sunderland, and when they got the news, and believe me, the excitement was quite palpable. But we shall see. The other interesting thing in that poll, that same poll, showed that Gerald Malloy in the U.S. Senate primary on the Republican side, Gerald Malloy is a political newcomer, is ahead of Christina Nolan, the U.S. attorney for Vermont, who had stepped down from that post to run for the Senate, in the Republican primary. She's had the backing from all the sort of so-called establishment Republicans, you might say. Former Governor Jim Douglas is her campaign manager, or rather campaign chairman, I should say. And Malloy has a 5% lead there. In that, which, that was interesting, I guess. We'll have to see. It also, that same poll also showed Peter Welch, who's running for the Senate on the Democratic primary, as the overwhelming favorite in that one. So, like I said, the voters will make the final decision. One other quick note, kind of on a statewide level, that just came out this morning. Governor Phil Scott has appointed Jennifer Morrison as the new commissioner of the Department of Public Safety. She's going to replace Michael Sherling, who stepped down last month. Jennifer Morrison used to work in the Burlington Police Department. She will be the first woman who will serve as the Department of Public Safety's commissioner, and hopefully we'll have an interview with her coming up next week. You know, public safety and police work obviously have been much in the news lately, well, for years actually. So this will be an opportunity, hopefully, to talk with her about her approach and philosophy of policing during a time when the profession has been struggling to recruit enough people to come join the forces.
All right, well, thank you, Andrew. In other news, it was recently announced that legendary MLB player and sports announcer Jim Cott was recently inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, New York, just last week. Cott played 25 seasons in the MLB, spanning from 1959 until 1983, playing for 5 different teams, most notably the Washington Senators, who later became the Minnesota Twins. He also won his first and only World Series ring with the St. Louis Cardinals back in 1982. Throughout his career as a pitcher, he was a 3-time All-Star. He recorded a whopping 283 career wins, which is currently 31st all-time. He also won a whopping 16 Gold Gloves in his career. He was voted into the Hall of Fame last December and was obviously officially inducted just recently, along with other legends in the class of 2022, featuring David Ortiz, Bud Fowler, Tony Oliva, just to name a few. It's safe to say it's a pretty stacked Hall of Fame class this year. Meanwhile, Cott also has this book, which can be found at Northshire Bookstore. And Cott will also be coming to Northshire Bookstore on August 26th. So if you're interested in hearing from him, go check it out then. It's unfortunate I'm going to be back in school then. I'd really love to hear from him. That's sounds like a really exceptional opportunity for the community to go and hear from a legend like Jim Cott.
Yeah, well, people who had that kind of career in professional baseball don't drop by Manchester all the time. I'm old enough to remember watching him play on television anyway, so it was always very, very good. And also he was an announcer for the Yankees for many years, so I got to hear him for a while. But anyway, yeah, his book is kind of fun too. It takes you back in time, and as you said, he'll be at the bookstore on Friday the 26th at 6 o'clock for a good old-fashioned in-person discussion about the book.
All right. Looking forward to that.
Yeah.
In other news, we recently got in touch with Rachel Batts in Dorset, Vermont. We've come to learn there have been some issues regarding the Dorset Trail along Hike Dorset, including illegally used ATV vehicles. There have been problems regarding fires, alcohol abuse, and all sorts of others on the trail. The trail has had to be closed recently, and restrictions have had to be made, which is unfortunate. But that being said, they're going to soon be hosting a focus group to discuss concerns regarding this recreation use and share all their views on how this can be managed. And in past years, there was no real discussion about this. And according to Rachel Batts, the more the community can weigh in, the better. And they're seeking support from a nonprofit organization known as Tread Lightly, whose mission is to promote responsible recreation across the country, who, if this goes through, would take over full-time in managing the Dorset Trail. We also learned more volunteering is needed. These volunteers are essential in keeping the trail neat and orderly. So if you're interested in potentially adopting or becoming a part owner of the trail, you can do so. You can get in touch with Hike Dorset via social media and their website, and people can adopt as much of the trail as they like, and trails will be assigned accordingly. Meanwhile, while we're still on this subject, invasive species have become a bigger problem than ever. Just to name a few, some invasive plants include buckthorn, Japanese knotweed, as well as garlic mustard. They're currently working and doing all they can to eliminate these invasive species. So there you have it. There's a little update regarding nature for you. Andrew, let's move on now. How about, can you give us a little update regarding Depot Street housing and what's been going on in Manchester?
Sure. Well, as many people know, there's been a discussion around creating roughly 40 units of mixed income housing in the area behind three buildings on Depot Street. Around 301 Depot Street has been the address frequently referred to it. I believe that's the current J. Crew building. That's the site that used to be occupied by the town hall before it moved up on Route 7A, its current location. And there's been some talk about moving the town hall back there, in addition to creating the housing project, which is, drawn a certain amount of feedback, some of it positive, some of it negative. There's been some discussion that people feel like it's not the right place for that sort of thing. And nothing's really been decided yet. There's also a question around the cost of moving the town hall back to that location into one of those existing buildings, which have always been owned by the town. Manchester Designer Outlets, the outlet management company, has leased them, and that lease runs out next April 1st, I believe, at which point the town could then take possession of those properties again. But one of the recent controversies was that that the working group that's been discussing the possible future uses of the town's property, they haven't had the public notice of the meetings on the town calendar, and this week the town officials announced that those would be posted. The most recent one was at 8:15 yesterday on Wednesday, the 27th of July. And I don't know what they talked about there at that meeting, but anyway, from now on, at least those meetings of the working group that's studying the housing project and moving the town hall back to that location will at least be public and easy to find. So anybody out there who's concerned about that, will be able to know when they need to get to the current town hall.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see because obviously housing has been a big subject of discussion. We all know that housing in Manchester is in very short supply. Certainly the affordable workforce, missing middle housing, almost impossible to find. And, 40 units of mixed income housing would certainly go a long way towards easing that a little bit. It'll be an interesting project to follow.
Very true. And as Andrew mentioned, the Depot Street in Manchester will now be hosting its meetings weekly publicly for everyone to view via Zoom. These meetings take place in the Equinox room at the town hall. So it's great. It's a great asset for the community to be updated on what's going on regarding 301 Depot Street. However, it is important to note, according to the Manchester Journal, that although this group consists of elected officials and stakeholders, it is not an official town committee per its bylaws. So we'll have to stay tuned on that and see which direction this story goes next. Anyhow, I think it's just important to note real quick, and a just quick change of gear here. Yesterday, there were 16 new COVID cases reported in Bennington County. So we're still in the medium range. But again, COVID still exists, so just remember to take precaution and understand that BA5 is on the rise and it's highly transmissible. So just keep that in mind.
So Griff, another interesting news item I think the viewers would like to learn more about is a new project underway. It's been underway for several years actually at Hildene, the Lincoln family home. They are getting close to starting construction on a new building to be known as Lincoln Hall at the site of the current event tent and event space, where there's been weddings have been held and other events happen. This would be a fairly sizable replacement of that. It would be a 14,000 square foot building, and just to kind of give a comparison, the main house at Hildene, the one that Robert Todd Lincoln had constructed back in the early 20th century, is 8,000 square feet. So this would be not quite twice the size, but close. It's a $5.7 million project, and about 2/3 of that fundraising is already completed. They're hoping to start construction on November 1st of this year. It would take about 18 months to build. It would be opened, if all goes according to plan, by May of 2024. There are apparently still a few relatively minor permit issues to be worked through, but nothing that sounded like a showstopper kind of thing when they held a little public meeting yesterday morning, over at Hildene, which was one of the requirements of the permits. So that's going to be a pretty big deal. Obviously, the weddings that normally would be held next year at that wedding tent won't be happening. I guess we'll be able to do some small-scale weddings elsewhere on the property, but for 1 year at least, that important moneymaker for Hildene won't be happening until May of 2024, when they will have that building built, and we'll have a little segment about that coming up, so folks can learn more about that when we have that one done.
In other news, Open Farm Week is coming up throughout the entire state of Vermont. The closest one to our region will be held in Danby. Can you give us any more information on that and how people can visit?
It's going to be August 7th to the 14th, and Smoky House in Danby is going to be taking part in that on Sunday, August 7th, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. They're going to be having a flax harvest and a blueberry picket party. So basically the idea is, to kind of reacquaint folks with what actually happens on farms, kind of meet the farmers, meet the animals, meet the plants, learn a little bit about agriculture, how things are going on the farm. Agriculture, of course, an iconic industry in Vermont for many centuries, right? And struggling at the moment, at least certainly the dairy sector we've learned a lot about has been struggling to kind of, have the price of their milk match the cost of doing business. So this is one way to kind of, I guess, reacquaint us all with what happens down the farm, and also give them another way perhaps to do things like, have farm-to-table dinner events, or other culinary kind of things, or agritourism, I guess is the expression that's often used. So anyway, yeah, it sounded like kind of fun. I found out about it when I went to an event up in West Paula last week. It's being hosted by a group called Dig In Vermont, which is a project of the Vermont Agriculture and Culinary Tourism Council. So sounded like it was kind of fun. It'll be on for a week there from August 7th to the 14th, and you can go to their website and find out where all the locations are. The one in Danby at the Smoky House is the only one I noticed in our immediate area, but maybe there's others also over in Townsend, so it's not too far away, but happening all across the state.
Exciting. Sounds great. In other news, in case you haven't heard yet or you're not aware, the sport pickleball is growing rapidly across the state. People of all ages are playing, from around the age of 5 to even elderly people. It's a really, really popular sport. I had the chance yesterday to catch up with Gloria Palmer of Green Mountain Academy to hear about pickleball and learn about how the sport works and all sorts of things. They even let me join a game with them once and get to really get a hands-on experience and learn what it was like. It was tremendous. I'm pretty bad at it, considering that I'm a beginner, but all in all, it was very fun. Glad I got to cover it. That being said, we are currently working on a segment that will be up next week regarding pickleball. What I've come to learn is the sport is basically a combination of tennis, badminton, and ping pong. And the ball is very similar to a wiffle ball, meaning it's light and it has around 30-ish holes in it. So it's a very, very unique sport, and honestly, I encourage you all to go out there and try it. It's very fun. If you're looking for a new hobby, try pickleball. It's awesome. Another package we are working on right now that'll be up momentarily is a piece on bike safety. We had a chance to catch up with Robin and Amy Werner, and to hear their take on bike safety and what people should know about how to ride a bike properly and stay safe while doing it. So stay tuned. We'll have you posted with more information on this coming soon. Otherwise, if you're looking for things to do, feel free to visit upcoming local events via our website, of course, at gnat-tv.org/events. Stay tuned. If there's anything that interests you, you can access everything here. It's all right there for you. Well, that will do it for today's episode. Thank you again so much for watching. As always, we appreciate the support. For the GNAT-TV News Project, I'm Griff McClellan.
I'm Andrew McKeever.